Okay, so we're at the point now where we have got most of panel 1 complete. And you can see that our panel has started out quite wide and it has slowly worked its way in with the decreases at the top, making quite a sharp curve, and the decreases at the bottom just sitting in line with the upward slope of our hat band here now. So before we complete panel number 1 and start working on panel number 2, we have a little bit of setup to do. So first I want you to have a look at what you have in front of you there and compare it to mine here a little bit. Bearing in mind now, compared to the last video, I have got more stitches here. I've redone this to make it a little bit easier to see. And compared to what you have in front of you there, this is going to be a lot shorter. You're going to have way, way more. It's going to be much longer and much taller on this section here. So bear that in mind. Where I have, I think 8, I'm pretty sure you'll have 19 lines along here if you're counting them there. But the thing I want you to focus on first is to create one chain stitch at the very beginning of your work. And we're going to do this first and then we're going to do all of our counting. So chain first, just because it makes it a little easier to work on. And as we recount here, you will see that you have 8 columns in total. If I count the little dotted lines or the little rungs, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the loose one at the end there is number 8. And you will, of course, have 8 corresponding V's on top of your work. You can kind of see those there now as well if I get it to focus. So I have the chain I've just created here, and then I've got my 8 V's beside. So I'm going to pinch them as I count. I've got 1, 2, 3, get that curl out of the way, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the one on top has a bit of an extra spiral to it, a little harder to see. There it is right there, number 8. So what we're going to do to set up the end of panel 1, so we can start into panel 2, is simply to look at our work. We're going to skip the chain stitch, that's this first V here, and we're going to skip the last V of our count here. So these two are going to go ignored. We're going to focus on V, technically V number 3 here. And into this, I am going to put 2 double crochets. So for those of you who aren't crocheters, what you're going to do here is slide your hook through like so. So you're going through both sides of that V. That's important if you want the texture that I've got on my sample hat. You need to go through both sides. Then we're going to yarn over. Remember, knitters, you are going to yarn up over your hook. You're not going to kick under like you would with knitting. You're going up and over. You're creating an entire revolution with your yarn over. It's getting a good hug on your hook. Pull through. The second yarn over. Pull through both loops on your hook using whatever fingers and thumbs you prefer. So that's the first double crochet in there, and you can see we have a nice big hole here now. So I'm going to go in, because I've been invited in, I'm going to do a second double crochet in here, like so. If you hear toes tapping, that's Cora wondering where I've gotten to. There we go. So that's 2 double crochets in that one there. Then I'm going to find the very next V along and repeat that process. So I'm going to go through both sides of the V, yarn up and over like so. Pull through, yarn over through 2. Double crochet in UK parlance, it is a single crochet in US parlance. I'm sure it's got many other names around the world. It's a very versatile, very useful stitch. In this case, we're using it to reset the number of loops that we're going to have. So we can start panel 2 with the same number of loops on our hook that we started panel 1. Because all that decreasing, of course, has made a huge dent in the height of our columns, and we need to restore that and get us back to where we began. I'm going to continue on here, wrestling into these. So I am technically, with my 8 V's on top, I've skipped one of them and the chain that I made. So I have 7 V's to work into. 2 double crochets into each means I'm going to be doing 14 double crochets in total. I'm almost there on that. There we go. For the record again, it's worth pointing out before anybody's brains exploded, I do hold my hook in a what would be considered a strange way traditionally, but it's a way that's becoming more popular as time goes on. This is sort of how a right-handed crocheter will crochet after being taught by a left-handed knitter. So we can blame my mum for the unorthodox method, but we can also blame her for teaching me to crochet, and I'm certainly happy with that. So here we go. Okay, so our last one here. Remember, as I said, we should have 14 double crochets. If you're unsure if you've got every single one of your V's, now's the time to check by counting back along the row you've just created and seeing if you do indeed have 14 double crochets. And you can see all those V's on top there now, if I can get this to focus. Oh, beautiful. There we go. Okay, so we have our 14 V's on top of our work, like so. So at this point, we are about to set up for panel number 2. I'm creating the chain stitch the pattern asks, and I'm turning my work again. So once again, I'm looking at the front of my work. I'm seeing the lines on my fabric here. And once again, as is pretty usual in crochet, I'm going to skip that chain. That first V there is the top of the chain. So I'm going to skip that. And into the 14 double crochets, I'm going through both sides, yarn over, picking up a loop like so. Into the next one down, yarn over, picking up a loop. So I'm essentially creating the start of a Tunisian crochet column or row off the back of these double crochet stitches. So remember, by the time I'm finished with this, I had 14 double crochets. I'll have 14 loops plus the loop that was on my hook originally. So I will end up with 15 loops on the hook. And of course, all of this is written out in that panel, in the pattern itself. So if the numbers are flying over your head, don't you worry. It's all written down for you there in that coloured panel with these instructions. So you can keep count to make sure you've got the right number of loops. If you don't have the right number of loops, chances are you've just missed a double crochet. Usually the very last one is a little bit shy and a little bit tiny. It's right there where my thumb is. It tends to be a little bit smaller because it doesn't have a friend on the other side to back it up, so it tends to shrink a little bit. So if you find yourself one short, chances are it's that double crochet that is eluding you. And just go have a little look for it and see if you can find it. So if I have them all there, I should have 15 here in total. So we go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Thank the yarn gods, I have my 15 in total there. So that has reset the number that we lost with all of our decreases. Now we have to have a bit of a family reunion with all the loops that we didn't lose. So in this case, we are going to find our very first one here, which is the result of our last column's increase. And you can see that decrease. You can see that decrease of 3 there and the resulting line right between my thumbnails there. So we're going to just work this as if it's normal traditional Tunisian. Just pop in, yarn over, draw through like so. And then we're going to carry on down the rest of the hat side. There we go. This guy. Oh, it's almost 8 minutes. You can see why I reduced the number of lines on this. Here we go. We're almost done. Remembering, of course, you will have more lines to do on yours than I have on mine. I've only got 8. I think you'll have 19. Pop in here, which means that when you're finished yours, you will have more lines and more loops on your hook as well than I have on mine. Yours is right because you've been very sensible and followed the pattern, whereas I've gone off all on my own and created a whole new sized hat. Here we go. Okay, so I've picked up all my loops. You can see there from the very tippy top right down to the hat band, I have loops now on my hook. The last thing, as we have been doing throughout here, is finding the very next V along on our hat band, which is this lovely big 2-stranded squishy V here. Going straight through that, picking up a last loop, like so. Then you're going to continue doing your return pass as normal on this, yarn over through 2 the whole way back up. So join me in the next video and I will show you how to do the make 1 that's necessary to do an increase at the bottom of your work for panel 2. Thanks a million for watching, everybody. You will of course see a link in the bottom to my Patreon to this particular pattern, along with the yarn that I used, which is Dusty Dimples Dusty Sock in colorway Foxy. I highly recommend it. It is glorious, glorious yarn. And you will of course also see the names of all the beautiful, wonderful people who support me on Patreon as well. I hope you join their ranks. Thank you very much for watching.